Welcome everyone to our July on the Air with ODA. And today we're going to talk about setting up Oracle Database Appliance with integrated data guard and using actually a DB system or database in KVM. So as usual with me is my colleague Carlos Ortiz. Hi, Carlos.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. So here's the agenda. We're going to go through a overview of data guard and then discuss integrated data guard between two DB systems, and then do a quick demo, and then we'll have some additional information, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So let's just look at the Oracle Data Guard, the basics. Oracle Data Guard ensures high availability data protection and disaster recovery for enterprise data. So the idea is that you have two systems, one primary system with the database and a second copy of the database on the standby system. And the way you keep in the two databases in sync through data guard is by applying the redo logs to the standby system. So this way your two copies of the database, in case anything bad happened to your primary database, then you can fail over the application and users to the standby database. Now with ODA, there are a number of use cases we can use data guard. Obviously, to do the disaster recovery protection. But it's also one thing I want to mention is that we have this concept called maximum available architecture, which is for any Oracle customers that are serious about availability, we recommend using the MAA, and most of our high-end enterprise customers do use that. And it's basically the combination of local protection of your database through your application cluster or rack, and then plus the remote protection using data guard. Now, what's nice with Oracle Database Appliance is that it's a platform with both rack and data guard all integrated. So it's a great component for the maximum available architecture. We actually have a technical brief that talks about this integration of MAA and ODA and step-by-step technical brief that's available that customers can use. Another use case for ODA with data guard is really to protect the single node ODAs. As you know, we have the HA ODA, but we also have single node ODAs. So with local standby, you can actually use data guard to protect your single node ODA to provide a second copy for failover. So a lot of our customers do that as well. And another use case for data guard and ODA is to use the data guard to migrate a older model of ODA to a newer model by just setting up the standby and then failover. And also you can use data guard to upgrade and patch your ODA from older software to a newer software, again using the data guard. The way you do is you patch your standby database to the latest version, and then you fail over to become the standby becomes the primary. So that's how you can do these patching and migration with minimal downtime. So, and we have customers that do that as well. Now, with integrated Oracle Data Guard on this platform, the ODA platform, we have made it very simple to have two ODAs and setting up the data guard. And you'll see this in our demo with just one command. As you can see on the right-hand side, the command is ODA CLI configure data guard. And you just answer a couple questions and how to configure the data guard, and you just hit go. Like within minutes, we can have the Oracle data guard set up. So that, and we'll show you this in our demo. Now, before you can configure the data guard, you have to, the first step is that you have to instantiate a standby database or make a copy of your primary database onto the standby ODA. Now, there are a number of ways of doing that. You can, the easiest way is probably, copy the database to an external NFS, and then you restore it onto your standby ODA. And or you can do this through the Oracle Cloud. That's another way to do that. Back up your database to the cloud and then restore it to the standby database. But today we're going to show you another useful way of instantiating the database is that without any external storage, you can actually remotely mount your standby ODA with NFS and then back up to it directly. And so we'll show you that in our demo today. But that's just the setup process. Once that's done, then you can just configure the data guard and in that window below, and it's very fast. Within minutes you can have the data guard set up. So the first part of our demo, we show you this instantiation thing with the remote NFS to the standby. That's so you don't have to have any external storage to do this instantiation. Then the second half of the part is to how you can quickly configure the data guard with the 2 ODA system. And then we can show you how to switch over and switch back. And so this is what we're going to show you today. Carlos, do you have anything to add? Or
I just want to make a comment right here on the CLI window, right, for our listeners. There is a single command, ODA CLI configure data guard. Right underneath here, you see the values that you need to enter, which is just password, the database name that you're gonna, the primary that you're gonna use as primary for data guard. And then once you enter that information at the bottom, you just see all default settings. So assuming that the default settings are okay, you just press enter and it's gonna start doing it. Or you can just change the defaults according to your environment, right? But that's all that needs to be done.
So before we start, I also want to just do a quick review of the DB system or database and KVM. With this integrated virtualization support, it's also a very powerful tool for our customers. In this slides, you can see 2 scenarios. On the first row, we show the database in bare metal. And in our demo, we're actually going to show you the scenario 2 below that, where we put the database in KVM, or what we call DB systems, right? And again, this is all integrated with the ODA platform, so we can manage the whole life cycle of the DB system. So we can quickly set up a database in KVM, and then you can modify, you can delete, you can change. So again, this is just a quick review of the DB system. Technically, you can do, of course, the integrated data guard between 2 bare metal databases, or in today's case, we're going to demonstrate setting up the data guard between 2 DB systems, or the database in KVM. You can also mix. You can have a primary database of bare metal and the standby on DB system. That's also allowed. Again, this is documented in our MAA tech brief. It's all the different scenarios you can do. But this is just a quick review of the database in KVM. Okay. So this is a very high-level picture of we have 2 ODAs, XA-2M. So of course, with KVM, you have to deploy everything in bare metal, and then we subsequently create a DB system or database in KVM, and then we do that on both. And we're going to show you how to instantiate the standby database with an NFS mount onto the standby ODA. And then we're going to show you how quickly we can just set up the integrated data guard. So this is kind of what we'll show you. So at this point, Carlos, why don't you kind of go through the demo process?
Yeah. So this is a bigger screenshot than the first slide where Paul was talking about the 3 different ways. And so as we mentioned, right, you can, in the first step, we're going to need to move or create a backup of the database that is in the primary system and put it on the standby. You can do it through an NFS, the OCI, or this backup to the target Oracle Database Appliance in case that you don't have an NFS or object store, right? You can do this directly from appliance to appliance. And that's what we're going to show you. This is more complex, obviously, but we want to show you this method more complex. On the next slide, this is from the user guide. If you have an OCI object store, right, then you can just find the instructions there as to what are the steps that you need to do to just, when you create a backup, right, it's going to go to the object store. And then from there, you can restore, right? It's simpler than what we're going to show you today. The NFS is also very simple, right? Since your NFS is already set up, then you're gonna just create a mount point And then after that, you just create the backup configurations and the usual steps, right? It's also another way, and those two are recommended. But if you don't have any of those, right, then what we're going to show you is how you can use the target Oracle Database Appliance to just put the backup in there. And here are the steps that we're going to go through, right? It's on step number 1, we're going to show you how to create a volume, create an ACFS file system, and then configure for NFS. And so in the illustration, you see the two systems, right? The primary on the left and the target on the right-hand side. And we put the numbers so you can see where we're going to be running these tasks. Number 1, we're going to run it on the bare metal on the target system. Right, we're going to run these 3 steps. Then step number 2, we're going to mount the NFS, create an NFS backup configuration, and then attach that backup configuration to the database that you want as the primary in your data guard. Then we run a backup, and this creates a backup report, and we're gonna copy it to the target. And this number 2 is gonna be run on the DB system. You can see the number 2 inside the DB system. I wanna point out here that mounting the NFS, we also are gonna run that on the target system. And then you see step number 3, right? We verify that the backup report is received in the target system. This, unfortunately, we didn't capture this in the demo, but you can just check it on your own. And then we're going to restore the database with a unique name, and we're going to define it as a standby. Now, the unique names are important because that's what DataGuard uses, right? Like, and we're going to show you where to look for that information, right? And then finally, number 4 is going to be we run the configure DataGuard, and we're going to do a quick switch over. The last line that you see here is more of a cleanup. Once everything is done, we need to kill the backups because you don't need them anymore. We already restored the database, and DataGuard is sending the updates. We need to clean up the to unmount, delete the volumes, update the export file, all that stuff, right? And that's not part of the demo, but it is in the user guide. Paul, you have a comment here?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again, step 1, 2, 3 are really about instantiate the standby database. So it's an optional step, right? If you have an external NFS, you can skip this. But this is a very good way to leverage the existing, resources so that you don't have to have an NFS to be able to set up an integrated data guard. But the actual integrated data guard is only step 4. So again, just keep in mind it's 2 distinct things we're doing here. So the first 3 steps really allow you to copy the primary database to the standby database to get ready to set up the data guard. And only the step 4 is actually the integrated data guard feature in ODA. Like I said, it's very simple to do, takes a few minutes. So it's a very powerful feature for your customers if they understand, how to set up a standby database and to configure the data guard. It's really simple with ODA.
Yes, and all this stuff here on step number 1 and part of step number 2 is going to look too complex, but it's well documented in the guide. We're going to give you the link. It's right. You would avoid this if you had the NFS, but again, right, we want to show you this in case that you don't have it, and you can just use the target appliance. So let's go to the video to show you the demo. So we need to be a grid user to create the volume, right? So here you can see that we're creating the volume. We're calling it backup 2, and it's 100 gigabyte, right? So we run it, creates it, and we get the information on the volume. This volume device name is what we're going to be using. And so here, right, we are creating a file system, ACFS, on that volume. The format is complete. All this is fairly quick, right? But then we exit grid, and now as root, then we're going to create our directory. Let me back up a little bit and just show you on the CLI. If you notice, there are 4 tabs. The first 2 tabs are for the primary system. The first tab is the bare metal. The second one is the DB system. And the next two tabs here are the target system. The first one is the bare metal, and the second one is the DB system. As I mentioned in step one, that we're going to be running that on the target system on the bare metal. That's why you see that activated here. Okay, so we create the backup to directory, and then with server control add file system, we added to the clusterware so it can do an auto mount and for high availability. Right, so that's done, and then we just start that file system. So we initialize it and start it, and it's done. Right, then after that is done, now we need to edit the export S file. Right, so this is where the primary configuration for the NFS server is kept, and we're going to specify the directories that we want to share with the server, right? This is what the file contains. So we add our directory and the IP address for the system that we want to share it with, right? It's so once those are the two systems that we're going to share it with, then we're done. And then we re-export all the directories, and then we just run here the verbose to see that the lines were added, right? Once that's done, right? So we've done step number one, right? That's using the target appliance. Now, right, we need to go to step number two, mount that NFS, create the NFS backup configuration. So notice here, now the active tab is the DB system on the primary system, right? That's the second one. Now we're here, right? So we create the directory for the backup, then we mount the target to this new directory. Okay, and once that's done, notice that I clicked on the DB system here on the target, right? Because we need to also mount it since we're going to be doing a restore later. So once we do that, then we come back here to the DB system on the primary. We create this DBs where the backup is going to be. We change owner, right? The so we grant the Oracle user read-write access to all the files under these folders. And then now we're ready to create the backup configuration. Now remember that on the Oracle Database Appliance, you can create backup configuration or a backup policy, and you can be, the target can be, okay, I'm going to send it to an NFS or to an object store, and you can just assign it to databases, right? It's so here we're creating a backup configuration. We're calling it this name here, right? Is an NFS. And so once we verify that it's created, right? So it's fairly quick. Then this is something that we do in the Oracle Database Appliance, right? So say that you have 10 databases, then you modify the database, give it a name, and then the backup configuration, right? You can have 5 databases going to NFS, another 5 databases going to object store, for example. Okay, so that's what we're doing, attaching that backup configuration to the database, and we confirm that is done. Okay, success is fairly quick also. And now, right now we're ready to create the backup. And this is our database name. We're gonna choose regular level 0, and this KA, it's important, is in the user guide, is gonna keep the archive logs, right? It's so we're creating the backup here. And this is a very small database, so it's very fast. It only took about a couple of minutes. And so, right, so here is complete now. It took about 2 minutes.
Now, Carlos, so is this to where the database is created onto the standby ODA?
Yes, right. So we create the backup and that local directory, but it's mounted to that NFS. So yes, it is in the target system.
Right. Okay. So it's copying over all the data files to the targets.
It's in the target system. It's not yet a standby database. We're gonna get to that step, right? So now notice that now the active tab is the DB system target, right? Where we also change ownership since we're going to be running the restore from that backup. Okay, now I came back to the DB system on the target here, you can see, because we're going to list the report that was generated. And you can see here, this is the list of reports. This is the level 0 backup that we did. And so what we need to do is send this report to the target DB system so that it can be used to restore the database into a standby. Okay, so the first step or the next step here is we're going to take that report and redirect it to create a JSON file. So it's very small text file, so it's done. The next step is going to be, we're going to copy this report, and we're using SCP, right, to the target DB system, and we're going to put it on the temp directory, right? So this is fairly fast because it's a very small file, so it's done, right? So here, now we're done. We copy the backup report to the target. Right, we wanted to verify that the backup report was received, and then we're going to restore the database. And as I mentioned, we don't have this step verify it, but you can just go to the temp directory and just make sure that it's there. Right. So now notice the tab. I'm at the DB system target. Right. So we're listing the databases, and the resource database is not found. Now we run this to tell you or to point out that in the target DB system, you're gonna need to delete the default database that was created. Okay, that we don't have that in the steps, we had already deleted it. But when you create a DB system in the Oracle Database Appliance, you must always create a database with it. But if you're gonna set up DataGuard, then you need to delete that default database, since we're going to be restoring from the backup a new database. Okay, so that's the purpose of this one here. Ahora CLI list databases, you don't have to have any. Okay, so we're okay here. And then the next step, right, we list the DB home. That's our DB home in the system. And now we're going to run this command. You can see here, I restore database. So we're going to restore from this backup, and we're going to use this report that we copy. And when we restore the database, we're going to give it a unique name of Berlin, database-Berlin. And the role is going to be a standby. And okay, and here is the database home ID. And FD is a parameter that is just going to delete any files that may be present. So, okay, we give it a password, and you'll see how long it takes here. It's okay, so we check the ID, and right here, right, you can see 331 to 339. So this whole step of restoring the database from a backup into a standby database, it took about 8 minutes, and you can see all the different tasks that I restore performs. Okay, and now we have a fully functional standby database. And so we're gonna list the databases. Notice that I'm still on this DB system on the target, right? And you can see the database name and all the information, which is exactly the same as what we have on the primary. But next, I'm going to show you the unique name. So if you do a describe database, you're going to get all this information, and you can see that the role is a standby. Okay, now the unique name doesn't show in this described database. It only shows when you describe the database in JSON format. That's a change that we're going to be making. We're going to tell our developers, right, that just add one more row here so we can see the unique name. But for the moment, right, you need to add -J. It gives us in JSON format, and you can see right there, right, the unique name that we gave to this database. Okay, so now, as Paul mentioned, right, 1, 2, 3 is all preparing, right, to then just run the true configure data guard. That's what we're gonna do next. And there it is, right? Configure data guard. You press enter, right? You give the IP address for the standby, then you enter some passwords for the standby. Yeah, we're going to specify which is the database, right? That the primary database, that's the name, and give it a password. And then these default values, right, are shown, and these are the most typical. Most customers are going to be using this, but if you need to change it, you can just say yes, you want to edit it, and then change it. So in this demo, we just accepted the default, then we run it. Notice the name of the data guard configuration is going to be the unique name of the primary and the unique name of the target or the standby. Okay, so then we continue, and then it's just going to go through all the steps that you see here, right? It performing all the configuration, and obviously we sped this up. I think it's around 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. So step 7 was about 9, I think. So it'll continue. Enable flashback, re-enable data guard, and now it is completed, right? It's 11 steps. Create data guard status, and it tells us your configured data guard, the name is completed. Once it's done, okay, so we're just gonna look at list the data guard status. And here you can see, right, notice that we are on the DB system in the primary, right, this tab. So you can see here, this is the name of the data guard configuration. This is our database, and it is a primary role. Okay, so that's on the target. Now, if we go to the, I'm sorry, that was the primary. If we go to the target on the DB system here, we run the same command, then you're going to see the same information, but it's going to say that it's a standby. Okay, so and now I came back here to the primary DB system, and we're going to switch over. We're going to run this function, right? Switch over. We give it the ID, and then we specify to which one we're going to switch over. In this case, we're going from London to Berlin, right? Berlin is going to become the primary. We enter the password, and it runs. We describe the task just to make sure that it completed. Here it was still running. We wait a little bit, and it's done. You can see here 9:11 to 9:13. So it took slightly over 2 minutes to do this. But if we list the data guard status, notice here, right? I'm on the primary. It is now a standby, and I'm gonna click on the here on the target system, and notice that it's still says standby. It's sometimes you need to run it a second time. It takes just a little bit to get updated to push for that new information. But here you can see that it's a primary now on the target system. Okay, now we're gonna switch it back, right? Now, same information, but now we're specifying that it's going to be London. And notice that I'm running this from the primary always, right? It's we run it again and verify that it's done. So here is completed, right? And then we run the status and notice that it still says standby. So we run it a second time. And now it shows that is the primary, right? So we go to the tab on the DB system for the target, run the same command again, and it's now a standby system. Okay, so oops, the video looped, but that's it. That's the demo. There are other functions that we're not showing you, so refer to the user documentation. And there are functions where if you want to retire an old system into a new one, you can use data guard, and there are other commands to deconfigure the old system and retire it, etc. So take a look at that. So that was the demo, and we want to give you this additional information here, right? You notice in red, right? This is the data guard paper at this link. So click on this one and you're going to find the steps that we just went through with more details. And also the second one here, the YouTube playlist, right? This is a YouTube channel for Oracle Database Product Management. There is a playlist for the Oracle Database Appliance, and you can find other, well, this video is going to be there, plus other ones as well. Paul, any comments or?
No, I just want to re-emphasize, the last part where you were doing switch, configure the data guard, switch over, switch back. It was just extremely easy, right? They're just really single commands to do these things. So this is kind of the value of integrated data guard. And we didn't show you, but we created a DB system, right? It didn't take that long to create a database system or database in KVM as well. So as you can see, we automate all this process, right? Integrated virtualization, now integrated data guard. Of course, we always had the integrated or the rack deployment. So again, just making all, everything easy for our customers to set up. You could do all this manually, configure the data guard and manually configure and manually set up. But because of this integrated feature, it makes it so much easier. So I just want to re-emphasize that.
Definitely, and that's the feedback that we've gotten from some customers as to how simple this is. So, so we can go to any questions that you may have. Feel free to put them in the chat, or well, I already see some questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think
okay, you and Tao have been answering some questions. Do you want to highlight any of the ones that you answer, or?
Yeah, there's a question about what version of Nfs is compatible with the ODA. That, I'm not sure. I think it's still Nfs 3, right? So so I think it's but we can check on that. Now, is ACFS also compatible to perform standby creation?
I don't.
Yeah. Now, the whole reason we created ACFS, so we will have a file system on the standby ODA so that we can NFS mount to it. Now, if you have all the backup onto the ACFS, you could copy all the backups to the ACFS, but you have to figure out a way to copy it to ACFS. Then I believe iRestore will work just as well. We just happen to be NFS mounting the ACFS file system. So so I don't know, Tao, I mean, do you have any comment on that?
I think the question is about whether we can create a standby and also configure data guard on ACFS storage.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's actually specifically asking about how to create backup on ACFS.
Right, because backups are just files, right? So
but I can answer both questions. So if you just want to use ACFS storage to mount your storage location, I think that's also fine. You can also run NFS on top of ACFS, but there's probably some, it's kind of a risky operation because you have too many layers of the technologies, but it's doable, but you need to really test it out. And the other question is whether we can configure, create the standby database on ACFS and configure data guard. Yeah, that answer is straightly yes. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question about the PPT. At this time, we're trying to find the location to hold, to put the PowerPoint in PDFs on a website, but that's in process. In the meantime, please just send an email to either Carlos or me, and we can send you a copy, a PDF file of the presentation.
Okay, and there is a question from Ravi. How about the integration of data guard in Oracle Database Appliances in the cloud control? Tao or Paul, do you guys get this one? Do you understand integration of data guards in the cloud control?
I think this is about enterprise manager integration.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So for that, yeah, if you
no,
for the basic like integration to getting the database information and all that, it should be okay. But if you want to monitor and also operate the data guard configuration inside the enterprise manager or cloud control, then it's probably not the case.
Yeah, it's not integrated. It's something in our list. Yeah. Okay. So the next one says, can you suggest a couple of use cases when this Oracle Database Appliance capability may play in a cloud migration scenario?
Well,
yeah.
Today we can easily, we have an integrated cloud backup. So you can take any database that's in ODA and you can back up to the cloud, to the object store. Now, from there, you can, theoretically instantiate that in the cloud VM. But we just have not, done any, there's no automation to do that, right? You will have to do that manually. But we do provide a way to back up the database from ODA to the cloud very simply, right? Kind of point and click. Then once it's on the cloud, then theoretically you can take that and do the instantiation there. It's something we're looking at to be able to set up DR, on the cloud, but that has not been implemented. So that's to the extent that we have integrated the cloud integration with ODA. So we have direct backup to the cloud now built into the ODA platform. But once it's there, then you can manually instantiate the database there.
Perfect. I don't see any other questions. Anyone?
I mean, if you want to ask live, you can also unmute yourself. We can just do over voice too.
Just wanted to thank you for your answer.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. So if you have any other questions, I mean, you can reach out to your sales representatives and they have a way to get a hold of us or just ask us directly. Feel free. Paul, I think we can, Paul and Tao, I think we can close it then.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for attending, and we will see you in the next On the Air with ODA with a new topic next month.
Thank you, everyone.